I want to start with it. Thank you everyone for joining. I'd like to thank Tupten Kunga Center and Patty and Cecilia for hosting and all the people that are making this possible. And thank you so much for joining and showing up. Okay. As we might have a couple late stragglers, so let's talk about our homework. Okay, because we had an interesting question. And one of them was, what is your relationship with change? And another thing we were looking at is everything already dictated and predetermined by karma, or do we have free will? So we're going to ease our way into those. I want you to think about those for a minute. And just let's orient ourselves with a good motivation as we're starting. And really thinking about, in participating in classes like this, I believe you'll gain some information about the Buddhist path. This happens to be the Tibetan tradition, and it's the Gelug tradition of Tibetan Buddhism. So this is more specific of this path. A lot of you are interested in that. Fantastic. And I believe by your discerning, investigating the information that you're receiving, you can find ways to dismantle suffering experiences in your mind that cause you more suffering. I don't see anything better than that, frankly, on the planet. So if we want to talk about the war in Ukraine, it comes from people having delusions in their mind, seriously. Okay, I'm not blaming you that you're causing that. And it's planet Earth. It's because people have this idea about power that is not accurate and out of balance, because they see themselves as solidly existing, not empty of inherent nature, right? Because they haven't practiced developing the good heart, the heart of bodhicitta. Because of these kind of things, we get confused. And when we get confused, we tend to kind of be like, well, that's mine. I want that. I don't like what you're doing. We forget that we're all interconnected. So if I don't like something you're doing and I threaten you, that's going to have another domino effect on the people in your community, people around you. And that's where war comes from, our own delusions, our own imbalances, and our own ignorance with that. So we can't fix the planet. We can't stop the war in Ukraine. You can't fix your neighbor or the guy at work you don't like or your partner. You can only fix your own mind. Okay? And because you're part of the world, that layers a bit of fixing in the world. Okay? That's how it works. So we have to be patient with the process as we fix ourselves, right? And then that's going to create us to be more patient with others as we work on this dismantling the negativities, purifying those, right? And then creating all the positive conditions you need to move along this path to get yourself free of all the suffering, to be ultimately blissful and happy. And every one of you is capable of doing that and becoming a Buddha, but the real purpose is to benefit all living beings. If you'd like, just take a moment, close your eyes briefly. Take a couple of deep breaths in and out. Let go of those distractions of the day, bringing yourself more present into our class as you consider this motivation, reaching this place of Buddhahood for that purpose of benefiting all living beings. For the benefit of all living beings is why we are getting together right now. For that purpose. Then it becomes virtuous because we set that motivation. Okay. So please relax. You can slowly open your eyes. And let's think about again, how do you want to listen in this class? Think about the levels of the pots I mentioned. Are you a dirty pot where you've already made up your mind about the Dharma and you're not going to hear anything new, right? Are you a leaky pot where you're not really paying attention, so everything's just pouring right out? Right? Is your lid too on firmly so nothing gets in? Is your mind thoroughly distracted so you can't hear anything, you're spaced out? Right? So try to show up as if you're in a gompa, really trying to pay attention. It really benefits you. I asked a couple questions about the homework. Okay, what's your relationship with change? How's that going? And the second thing is everything predetermined? Is everything made up already? So I really don't have any participation. Is it free will or is it karma? So I want to get any views on that. Anything you thought about this past week? If anybody has any comments and wants to unmute. Sheil, can you put your camera on? It would be great to have you along with us here. Anybody's thoughts? Anybody?
Well, I did. I was looking at the karma and free will because I thought that was really interesting, and I just jotted down a few things because as I was thinking about it, and one was that the Buddha himself told us that we all have a choice and we all have individual responsibility, and because of that, we have then our own personal retributions. So I thought, okay, well, we can choose what we're doing. And so my answer was yes and no, because yes, when that seed ripens, I was thinking there are times we're in circumstances where we can make a choice to do something differently. Although I think there are also times in which we have no choice based on our karma, because we may have a rebirth that we would not have chosen. Or like if somebody was suicidal and they jumped off a cliff because of whatever karma created that, like they don't have a choice once they make that move to change their decision. So I think it's both yes and no. Like we do have some choices, but not a lot of choices. Like that was just.
Yeah, that's great. Maureen, you should be teaching this class. Okay. What do you guys think about that? What are your own thoughts on that? Are you participating in something? Is it all just happening to you? No control? Jeff.
I'm a yoga practitioner, and I remember one of the teachers that I had, they talked about it's not what happens to us, it's how we react to what happens to us. So whether you think that you have choices or where you have the free will, your reaction, because you can't, I remember you were just talking about the war, what's happening. I mean, we can't control that. Or when you're talking about Putin, I mean, he reminds me of a small child. This is mine. I want my, he wants all the toys. But we can choose how we react to that. We can't control what he's doing, but we can control how we react or how we choose, if we want to help. We talked about change. That was another one that you had asked about, because
that was another question. What's your relationship to change?
Because and there's a lot of change now here in Chicago with the mask mandates, and the masks are coming off, and and a lot of different people are reacting to that differently. And I just go back to, it's like, okay, it's not what happens to us, it's how we react to that. And that was kind of the way I was thinking about whether it's free will or whether it's karma. It's like, okay, this is happening. What am I going to do? How am I going to feel?
Right.
How am I going to react?
Thank you. No, absolutely. It's really about our response. Thank you, Jeff. So much. You're reminding me so much of your dad right now.
I think it's the beard.
Something. So Jeff's in Chicago. Maureen's in Florida. Jeff's in Chicago. I met Jeff and his family years ago when I was at Vajrapani through an unfortunate incident, because Jeff's brother died in a car accident. And as a result of that, his brother used to come to a Buddhist monastery in Boulder Creek, California, where I was living. But he came to the monastery on the other side of the road. But his family came and thought it was Vajrapani Institute. And then they met me, which was a really fortunate thing that we met. But it was the wrong center just out of fortuity. But anyway, we became friends. I became friends
My
with
mom
Jeff's
says
family.
it was the right center. My mom always says it
Yeah,
was
she
the
always
right
says
center.
it was the right center because we met each other there. And so its parents are, his father passed, but they're darling people. His mother's wonderful. And they live in Chicago. And then when I moved back from California to Milarepa Center in 2008, my dad and I did the journey in the car, a little car with my stuff in it. And we stayed a night at Jeff's parents' house in Chicago, on the west side of Chicago. And then I drove 15 hours back to Pennsylvania in one day. Right? So, and then I was there for many years. So it's really nice to have Jeff along with us. So again, our response is, and what's your relationship in general, all of you, with change? How's that going? You doing pretty well with that? Nobody wants to say anything about change. Please go for it, Dinah. Go
Okay.
for it.
I always think of that story when I feel like I need to make a decision and I have that compulsive, impulsive thing going on. I remember the Monty Man and that story about the guy who's sitting there with his prayer wheel and the neighbors come over and, oh, it's too bad your horse ran away. We will see. And then when the horse comes back and the son is breaking the mare, he comes back with a mare and then he's breaking the mare and he broke his leg. Oh, that's terrible. And he said, we will see. And then the son didn't have to go to into the military as a result of breaking his leg. And it's like, if you can go back and look at, if I go back and look at situations that have happened in my life and run it through that scenario, I realize that right here where I am right now, I wouldn't be here if any of those decisions that I made in the past, if I would have made any changes, I wouldn't be right here right now. And I really love where I am right now. And I must have accumulated a shitload of good merit in previous lives because I've just got it made. I have so much to be grateful for. And I'm so glad I met you.
Oh, it's lovely to have you here. Excuse her French there, but thank you. It's very nice to have you here.
I
Yeah,
love the term,
great.
lack of profanity offends no one. So
It's also interesting, again, transforming problems. That's another class, but just how you can look at an unfortunate situation and there's probably a silver lining, something positive, just like when I mentioned meeting Jeff's family because of the unfortunate accident of his brother, like that. Yep. So how are the rest of you doing with change? More specifically with change. You're okay to flow with it or resistant, Elaine?
I believe that the changes that I have the hardest time with and the people around me are the ones where you feel blindsided. So the ones that you can draw those dots, like Dinah was talking about, where you can say, okay, I can see where past decisions led to this, yada, yada, yada. But where something happens that you didn't see coming, that's the challenge, I think.
So the surprise, things when it's a surprise that happens.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yeah.
so this is what we want to practice, because what happens is if you don't get ready for death, if you're not thinking about death on a daily level, seriously, it's going to be the biggest surprise that hits you. Whether it's fast, whether it's a slow death. I mean, and I still notice, I did hospice work for years in San Francisco during the AIDS epidemic. And one guy I was with for 2 years as an emotional support counselor. Some people, if in the late 80s, the way people died from AIDS it was horrible. It was really horrible the way, now it's like a manageable disease, but it was horrible. And there were some people that we were saying they should have passed already, but they were still lingering. And my guy was like that. He was a friend of mine. And the last time I saw him on a Friday night, and it was just awful what was going on with his body. He was in so much pain, and it was just so distressing for everybody, all the friends around him. And when I got the call that he died Sunday, 2 days later, like it wasn't, I knew he was going to die soon, but I remember still having this like there's this final, still shocked when, what was I thinking? So get ready, because these changes, some of them come quickly, but is your mind fluid and flexible? And again, from what Jeff was saying, how am I going to respond? what's my response? Because sometimes there's slow changes where you kind of are ready, okay, or this friend's kind of flaky, so she's probably going to cancel lunch again. Okay. But then you have a sudden change. Is your mind enough to ride the waves? Right. And then the second part is it free will or is it karma? Very much what Maureen was saying, that about participating, like have your eyes opened as much as you can. That's what the spiritual path is trying to do for you, trying to help you do, so that you have enough wisdom and compassion to look for the signs and see what's the best option for me every moment. Most of us are just going along on a daily, you have your daily activities, what you're doing. You're going to go to the grocery store, you're returning emails, you're doing some work, you're having a cup of tea, all those mundane events. But occasionally there's a bigger decision. I even have like a decision, even today was I have a little bit too many emails right now because of the nature of the work at Milarepa Center. And I'm kind of, I'm not sure what I deal with first. There's so many different areas. So there's a decision of, okay, but one of the things from what Jeff said is I have to calm down. I'm not going to do it with anxiety because that's not going to help. So I've already been through, I'm already like, no, just going to get to these when and then I'm going to start. And I was already today looking through them, answering, getting them off the thing. And then I'll go to the next level. And then I had a couple meetings and that's all I can do. I'm not superhuman. So you slowly will answer the things in the process that'll happen. I can't do it any faster. And, so just engaging like that, but I am going to engage with a good motivation. I really, in some ways, love this work because it's helping a Dharma center. So it's Dharma oriented. So that always makes me happy deeply with what I really want to do, whether it's teaching or helping a center. And so I really want to do that. So there's the engagement from my side, right? But then there's things unfolding from my karma, from imprints in my mind. Okay. And I'm watching them as they unfold. And I give you an example. So the Land of Medicine Buddha website is a mess. It's just too many people were involved in it and it's a mess. But I've been at centers before that had a website that was a mess. So what you need to do is you're going to go back and you're going to find a volunteer with tech background because we don't have any money right now to pay people. So I did this before. And then we're going to rewrite every tab that I want, everything. And so what's happened is I'm okay to do that. I will participate in that. But right now there's too many things on my plate. So I haven't been able every week. It's like falls to the bottom of the list, but it's an essential thing we need. So again, part of the karma is like to be back at a center that's struggling again. Okay. But why couldn't I go to a center that's already really up and running? I don't have that kind of karma. I always end up, but I end up because I have the skills, not me alone, but with a team to help get the stuff sorted into a good space. So again, there's some karma there that, I need to be in the trenches, kind of putting each thing back together with a team of people. And sometimes there's frustration, but I've fortunately learned at a couple of other centers that not to let the frustration overwhelm me, because that's going to create more negative seeds in my consciousness. So I'm kind of like, okay, let's do this in a different way, more spacious, so that's how I'm choosing to participate in the karma that is being imprinted right now as it unfolds. Does that make sense? You're all kind of deer in the headlights right now.
No, so we're trying to get to karma neutral.
Is the karma there? We have positive karma, negative, and neutral. You have three kinds of karma. So and here's neutral karma. I'm going to kind of say neutral karma. I had a good motivation this morning. So that makes some more positive things for my day, especially connecting with that motivation again and again through the day. And then I go and I brush my teeth. And while I'm brushing my teeth, I don't really have that many virtuous or non-virtuous thoughts. Like I'm looking at the sink while I'm brushing my teeth, kind of like, did I get that tooth? That creates, I'd say, neutral karma. There's just another moment of brushing your teeth, another moment of a daily activity that, now, if you're brushing your teeth and thinking that you're a deity and you're empty, right? and you're brushing the deity's teeth and you're cleaning away all your negativity so you can become a Buddha to benefit all living beings, then brushing your teeth creates a virtuous imprint in your mind. If I'm brushing my teeth and I'm really angry at somebody, and I'm thinking about that and thinking how I'm going to get them back, that will create a negative imprint in your mind based on the nature of the thoughts. Not really the action of brushing your teeth, but so you see how karma can be positive, negative, neutral. We're going to talk about that a little later. Okay.
Amy,
Yes.
there's one thing I thought about that I thought it was kind of harsh the first time I ever heard it from a Buddhist. And it was like, oh, well, it's their karma. And I thought that is the meanest thing to say. That was my first initial reaction. So, I mean, I understand it better now, but like when you just say, well, it's their karma, it's like, to me, it's just so not compassionate. Like,
yep. So there's a couple things once you're at this for a while and when you're newer, and because I've run retreat centers, residential centers, we get people that come and they're not even Buddhists. They're new students and they want to live at the center and have a job. And so they don't really understand karma initially. What does it mean? People have an idea what karma means, and it's now bantered around normal society without much, oh, it's good karma. You won the lottery, good karma. They don't really even know what it means, right? That's bad karma. You had an accident, car accident, whatever. So again, you want to be appropriate in what you're explaining to people. You don't want to just throw it on them. Well, that's, oh, she had a car accident. Well, that's her karma that her husband died when they were young with young kids or something. No, it's really a tragic thing. You could say Ukraine right now. I find it very tragic based on the egocentricity of Vladimir Putin and the fact that he's so separated from kindness in his heart. Like, I find that really sad, and overall in what's happening. But the Ukrainian people collectively, they do have some negative karma that's ripening for them to experience a war right now and to have their country invaded. They definitely have a collective karma like that. You could say that about the Jews in Nazi Germany, the Rwandans, of what went on in Rwanda with the what was it, the Tutsis and the Hutus or something, and all the genocides, Bosnia and the different, so there is a karma, and the people that are perpetrating it right now, the Russian soldiers, Putin, are creating such heavy negative karma. Now, but part of it, if you're a Russian soldier, depends on your motivation. So there are Russian soldiers that are all for this and think, great, Russian nationalism, fantastic, I'm ready to invade. And I've read some things, there's some Russian soldiers that don't want to do this at all. So they're going to have a different result ripening. That's how karma works. Okay. But you want to be very careful when somebody's suffering, especially, and they don't quite understand Dharma, or, to just say, oh, well, that's your karma. Like, very offhand, it's have compassion for people. When you're with a group of serious Dharma practitioners, you can kind of remind them and go, wow, that karma is really intense. And I had a friend recently, I have a nun friend, some nun friends close to here. And one of them said to me, well, she said the same thing. She goes, it's always your karma to come into centers that are a mess. And she goes, you have a great, Land of Medicine Buddha has the greatest potential of any center I've been at of our organization. That's why there's obstacles. I'm excited. This place is a jewel. It is a jewel. Come and help us, right? You can even help us remotely. Okay. So it's, but she said to me, she goes, well, but you have those skills. So she goes, I'm really excited to see what happens. She goes, because I saw the last 2 centers you were involved, and that was pretty cool. What happened to those centers? Like, transformation. It's not like I'm any magical person I'm not doing it alone. It's not just me. But there's some karma. So she could say that to me. And I know that. And I kind of said, I know. Yeah, I wonder if I ever get in the end to be at a center for a while that's really flourishing, that I get to like reap the benefits. And I did have that the last 4 years at Vajrapani, I'd say. The last half, I had it like that. Yeah, it was like that was running really well. And so here's another thing that happens at residential centers is you have a new person come, a new student. They don't know much about Dharma. They're all excited for, the center, it's new, it's a community, and they got their job down. And the first month is wonderful. And then the novelty wears off. And when they were coming to a center in the Redwoods, and this center is also in the Redwoods, And Vajrapani was, and if it was later in the year and the rain starts coming, the trees have molds and it gets dark. And suddenly, you know, a few months, 3 months later, they got a cold, they were tired, it was muddy, that, you know, and they weren't really doing that well, and they'd get a flu or something. And then you'd hear some other member of the community say, oh, great purification, right? So when you're new, people don't want to hear that. They don't understand. So when you're suffering, anytime you're suffering, you are experiencing some sort of purification. So as a Dharma practitioner, you might say, welcome, to fold that into your practice and go, I know I needed this. You know, it's helpful, it's strong right now, and I'm not all that happy or settled, but I know this is this is temporary. I'm going to come out the other side. I'll be better for it. And that you have the Dharma maturity to look at it, but you won't want to say that to a new person because it just compounds the suffering for them and they don't really understand. So it's a good point that you bring up, Maureen, of it can seem callous of like, oh, that's their karma, like that. So I want to talk today more so about refuge, karma, how we get into suffering. And last week, just as a review, I talked about precious human rebirth. I talked about death and impermanence, that we have to think about those. We started to talk about the different realms of existence, the lower realms. And I also mentioned the upper realms. And I just want to talk about within samsara, just to better orient you again. Because we're in samsara, what it means is the mind possesses primordial ignorance. Your mind possesses primordial ignorance. Now, I don't actually know your mind, so I can't say that. But as an ordinary being, which means you're going to experience samsara, which is a Sanskrit word for to cycle or turn, which is all through suffering, is you are subject, you're a sentient being. And what that means is an ordinary being with an ordinary consciousness. That means you haven't had a direct perception of emptiness yet. And as a result, the reason is because you suffer from primordial ignorance. And you go, well, where did it come from? It simply comes from a previous habit in the mind, a previous moment of that in the mind. Okay. And it's from the ignorance that creates all this negative experience for us. It creates the war in Ukraine. It creates some problems with your relationships, ill health that you suffer from. It creates death for you and rebirth again and again, meaning in an uncontrolled way. You can't control it and you suffer from it. And all the different sufferings we have, from little small sufferings to the really big sufferings in life, all due to this primordial confusion, because I didn't understand reality directly. I don't know how things really truly exist. And I impute a false notion onto everything, especially myself. So based on this, there's 3 realms of existence. The most advanced level within this, okay, but they still suffer ignorance and they're still ordinary beings, okay, is something called the formless realm. There's the formless realm, the form realm, and the desire realm. Okay, and I talked about the 6 realms of existence that exist within the desire realm, but I wanted to mention the form and formless realms. The formless realm, again, the most advanced of this, they're formless. They have no form, they have no body. Okay, so their consciousness is to have no grosser energy. And it's something hard for us to conceive of. What's a formless being really like that doesn't have a body? The beings born like this, it's a result of a lot of shine or concentration meditation. Okay, a lot of that meditation, you go, well, then why do I want to do concentration meditation? Okay, but it's shine, not used skillfully, not used in a skillful way, not done with the right motivation, or perhaps staying in the bliss of shine when you get to a high level and just wanting to hang out there in the bliss, not having the Mahayana motivation of, I need to actually attain shine so I can get emptiness and get enlightened to benefit all living beings. You know, combine that emptiness with the right method, bodhicitta, to get enlightened for the benefit of all living beings. So those that hang out in that blissful state for too long without a better motivation can end up in the formless realm. Okay, this realm lasts a really long time. Okay, we're talking in eons. Okay, but then what happens is they use up a lot of karma that got them into the realm, and eventually the karma runs out and they end up generally in a suffering life. Then we go to the form realm. So further down the spectrum, you get the form realm, slightly grosser because they have form, okay, with some of the grosser physical energies, but they're still actually quite subtle beings. And then this is a result of a similar meditation where they got stuck in the blissful thing, didn't want to get out, and that keeps them coming back in a form realm. Then we get to the third level, desire realm. Desire realm, okay? In the desire realm, there's 6 different levels, and I mentioned that before. 2 God realms that are at the top. There's a hedonistic God realm, jealous God realm, and then the humans, that's us, okay? So we come at the bottom of the upper realms in the desire realm, and then we have the 3 lower realms of that: animal realm, prey to or hungry ghost, and the hell realms, okay, which are a variety. So I just wanted to explain these 3 overarching realms: formless, form, desire, okay, and then in the desire realm, these 6 classifications, okay? And it's interesting when you talk about the desire realm, is look at our realm. It's full of desire. Everything is get this, own this, have that, get more. We're never satisfied. And it's really interesting, the desire realm, to think, could you just kind of be in a space for a day or a weekend and watch the desire in your mind pop up? Oh, I want a cup of tea. I think I'll have something to eat. Oh, I wanted to go on the internet and find that little fixture for my kitchen. Oh yeah, I was going to buy that, it's just a constant. It could be even like, oh, the Dharma book thing catalog just came out. What am I going to buy? Could you just subdue for a day or two of just each time one of those little bubbles comes up, a desire, right? Could I just watch it come up and go, do I have enough now? Am I satisfied with what I've got? I'm not saying don't eat when you want it, when you need to eat to live, but just in general, watch those, those wants to pop up, how they pop up constantly, keeping the mind not peaceful, keeping the mind not peaceful. So I want to talk about refuge. Once we get through this, moving along the path, because we're talking about presenting the path, we come into, you want to have, it's so advantageous to be a human, precious human rebirth. The situation's quickly slipping away, death and impermanence, because everything changes and we're definitely going to die. And when we die, I can end up in one of those other realms. And the most optimum realm is to be a human. Of all those different situations I mentioned, you're in the best one right now. What are you going to do with it? What do you want to do with this realm? So here you are, you got here. You're a human that met the Dharma. You've made it. Fantastic. Somebody's done a lot of work in your mind back there. Okay. So now you're in this realm, and what you realize is, but things could get a lot worse. And I am going to die. And when I die, it could get a lot worse. But I'd also, even in this realm, I'd like to get rid of more suffering. There's suffering in my life. I don't really appreciate at all that there's war on the planet. I don't like that at all, in fact. Right. And like we think we're independent, but because of the war in Ukraine, and because all these companies are pulling out and the oil is shutting down, we're not doing the oil from there anymore. And because we've already been through COVID and it's already affected the supply chain all over the world, everything's been more expensive. Well, gas is going to keep climbing for a little while, you guys. It may never go down, right? I don't like being in a world like that, dependent on oil and then paying. In California right now, $5 a gallon is cheap to fill up your tank. $5 a gallon, and that's cheap. I don't even know if I can find that anymore. I think it's gone up again. I saw it $6 on one thing. But again, in Europe, they've always been paying high prices. So it's just going up, up, up. Okay. So you can kind of say, I'd like something to be better. This could be worse. I don't really, even now. But then again, I could free myself, but what about all these other beings? So you want to develop that good heart. Okay. And that starts to get you into, well, what do I do? And what do I do with the suffering? Right? We take refuge. We start finding proper, appropriate protection for more suffering. In our tradition, it's Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So the Buddha jewel Dharma jewel, Sangha jewel, called the 3 jewels of refuge. Rinpoche calls them the 3 rare sublime ones, sometimes called the triple gem, all the same, all synonyms for Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. So let's just, some of you already had courses on this. Let's just orient ourselves. The conventional Buddha is the historical Buddha we know of, Shakyamuni Buddha, living 2,600 years ago. Okay. And you go, well, what is it about him? You know, and you've heard stories of, you know, the Buddha's life. I talked about it a bit in the beginning, things like that. Extraordinary, but he built that life as a prince on many previous lives where he made tremendous effort. And it inspires you, leaving the kingdom, going out, trying to find an end to suffering and discovering it after a lot of effort in this life and previous lives. Conventional Buddha jewel. So he sees you, it inspires you. You go, I'd like some of those qualities. You might have met His Holiness the Dalai Lama or seen a teaching or been at a teaching or Lama Zopa Rinpoche or other teachers at that level, and it inspired you. And you're kind of like, I want what they have. I like what they have. So that inspires you. That's one thing to take refuge in. There's an ultimate Dharma, Buddha jewel, the omniscient mind, the all-knowing consciousness. Because think if you were all-knowing, you'd have no fear. You'd have every perfect level of wisdom, compassion, loving kindness. All of those good qualities manifest in that mind. That's certainly something to take refuge in. Then you have Dharma jewel. Conventional are the teachings. Ultimate, the teachings on emptiness. That's what really cuts out the root of the suffering, the ignorance, the teachings on emptiness. How am I going to get there? Well, you start studying this path, exactly what we're studying right now. You start familiarizing yourself with all the topics of the Lam Rim and doing some meditation on them. We're going to do some meditation in a moment, right? And really, because the meditation is your personal experience of taking it a bit deeper. How is it relating in my life? Because it's a meditation that starts dismantling some of the negativity in the mind and changing your view. But you have to do the meditations. And that's what a lot of people aren't doing. People aren't making the time for that. Really, really valuable. Okay? So then you'd learn and you'd go across, onto the path. And then you get to emptiness. And we're going to talk about it in this course later in another session. And what is it about emptiness? And what do I need to study about emptiness? What do I need to meditate on emptiness? How do I meditate properly on emptiness? And you have to do it again and again to start shifting a little bit of your view of the concrete nature of all, the concrete independent nature of your entire reality. It doesn't exist like that at all. So it starts loosening things up, right? That grows your compassion, okay? So you start slowly moving along that path like that. And so the suffering, so refuge in the Dharma jewel, conventional ultimate, Sangha jewel, conventional and ultimate. Conventional it could be your spiritual community, like a center like Thupten Kunga Center, spiritual community. It could be some Dharma people, buddies you have around you that you live near. On another level, it's monks and nuns, especially fully ordained monks and nuns. But on an ultimate level, the Sangha jewel are those who've had a direct perception of emptiness. And then they're called Arya Sangha, noble Sangha, because once you have a direct perception of emptiness, then you understand and experience the 4 noble truths or the 4 Arya truths directly. And you have a totally different experience in your mind like that. Okay, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha. Now, part of what creates the cause for you to take proper refuge is, first of all, there's a fear. Now, this is not like a God-fearing religion, Buddhism. Fear is used as a motivator. So the fear comes from just those motivations I told you. I'm afraid that when I die, things are going to be much worse. I actually am afraid right now that something might happen, you might say. And so you have this different fear that comes up, and the planet right now is struggling. But a lot of people are afraid of things like that. I moved to this area. I remember living in Pennsylvania and thinking the pandemic and things, and my dear friends out here were experiencing these wildfires. Many of my friends lost their homes in the fires in this area. So suddenly, and I was thinking, well, my karma, I don't live in a place like that. Well, now I do, right? Something changed. Okay. So, but again, people have a lot of trauma from the fires that they didn't go through here, but they went right across the street from Vajrapani Institute. Yeah, it was quite frightening for the center and all the people there. And so again, so the fear, use it as a motivator to think of what, it inspires you to think, I need something that's really going to be a proper coping mechanism. What am I using now? Is it really going to protect my mind? And then the other part is, if you think about what would really protect me, and you go through, well, my family and friends, chocolate, being, really intellectual and having all these degrees and having all these accomplishments, having a big house, will that protect me? Having all this money, does that protect me? No, Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, you may come around to. But you want to do it slowly, really checking your life. What's really working in your life? What's not working, right? What are their qualities? So what you start studying are the qualities of Buddha, Dharma, Sangha, to see that it inspires you. They really are a valid refuge. So you've got this confidence in them. So you've got two causes that create proper refuges: fear and confidence. The fear motivating me, I need something that's really going to support me. And the confidence, that seems to be, but you need to check. So for me, meeting Lama Zopa Rinpoche in the beginning of my Dharma career, and I didn't know anything about the Dharma, but I had the good fortune to end up on I think a 3-week trip with him and 60 of his disciples in Lhasa, in Tibet and surrounding areas, where I had 3 weeks. And I had a week before that where he was teaching at Kopan Monastery in Nepal. And I could check up on him as much as I could, but he was there. He was very accessible. He was right there leading pujas. He led us to all these pilgrimage sites. And I was fascinated with him, intrigued. I never met anybody that seemed to have that pure of a heart and intention. It was only a feeling I had. It wasn't anything specific that he said. I couldn't even understand half of what he said at the time, but I had a feeling about him. I never met, obviously he's my guru, so there was obviously a connection, but I didn't know that. But I studied him. I watched him with his students. I watched him with the Tibetans. I watched him with animals. I watched him during the pilgrimage. I watched this tireless, he never stopped. Never seemed to stop. I went to bed, 11 o'clock at night, we go to bed, but then I hear from other people, oh, we were in a puja all night with Rinpoche last night. Some of the students would say, oh, that all night? Yeah, we finished at 5 a.m. Okay. But we're out of the buses at 7. There's Rinpoche. Out of the bus at 7. That was interesting. Day after day after day, I watched this. And you get to like the 5th day or a week later, and I went, well, what kind of drug is he on? Because I want that. I want to it was so impressive watching him day after. He wasn't on any drugs. Dharma. So it drew me to him, like, wow, that's magic. I want some of that. It was very impressive. So you have to check. Absolutely. Okay. And the other thing, this is how Dharma works. Okay. So you slowly want to have your own experiences where you're checking, and you go online. And then when things open up, you can get in front of a teacher in person. You can get an appointment with the teacher, highly realized being like Rinpoche. The Light of the Path retreat is supposed to be happening this summer. Okay. Virtually. Part of it will be virtual. Okay. Meaning there will be some centers hosting, I think, things. We might host something at Land of Medicine Buddha, but Rinpoche will come in for a session a day at least. So get yourself, if you want to connect with Rinpoche, then make sure you're watching those videos, and make sure you're watching them live if you can, because it's different. When it's live streaming, and I've checked this through the pandemic, it's different than when you're watching the recording later. If it's possible for you, if the time allows, between your job, between the time differences, see if you can watch some of the sessions when they're streaming live. It's really different because Rinpoche is there in Nepal, if he's still there in Nepal, right? And he's going to be doing this just for us. So you at least get that sense. And then slowly, if things change and whatever, you might be able to visit Nepal if Rinpoche is still there. You might be able to come to a retreat with Rinpoche travels again. And we have to request from our heart that Rinpoche visits our centers again. that that's possible for Rinpoche to move around again. I don't know if it'll happen, but we request. It comes due to request. So you don't just kind of leave it there and go, when's Rinpoche going to come? You request from your heart. You can write a card. You can write a letter, request letter. You can send an email. All of our centers, we do that. I mean, that's how I got the lamas to come, is I wrote letter after letter after letter, and several times a year to Rinpoche, giving him an update on the center and then requesting him to come, like that. Okay, so I just wanted to explain a bit of Refuge. There's a lot to go through in the class, but what happens is you come to Refuge, there's a lot more I can say about it, is you then come to karma, a very profound part of the teaching. A lot of you've heard about karma before. Karma is a Sanskrit word that means action. Action. It's the movement of your consciousness. It's the movement of mind. Okay. So what we know about karma, it's very intricate. It's very sophisticated. You need a highly realized mind to really understand the full workings of karma. What we can understand at our level are 4 characteristics of karma. Okay. Number 1, karma is definite. Okay. And then what that means is if you do something positive and you think something positive and you say something positive, it will definitely result in happiness for you. Plants a seed of virtue in your mind, only your mind. Okay? If you think, say, or do something negative and you harm someone, that will plant non-virtue in your mind that will result in suffering for you. Definite. Number 2, karma increases. Karma increases. And what that means is if you do a small virtuous thing now, and you don't do a lot of negativity or get angry to rip out the root of that virtue, it grows over time. It becomes a bigger, 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 bigger virtue, like that. But the same with a negative imprint. If you don't do purification, proper purification practices at the end of every day, or sometime during the day, then negative karma will increase more and more, like that. So we want to take care and do proper purification. Number 3 of karma, you don't experience somebody else's karma, meaning you don't experience the results of somebody else's negativities or positivities that they're doing. So you can't blame someone else. Your life's miserable, it's your fault. Okay, you've got the seeds in your consciousness. Number 4 characteristic is karmic potentials don't lose their ability to ripen over time. Karmic propensities, seeds, potentials, when they're planted over time, they're going to come to fruition. The only way it gets interrupted is if you do intensive purification practices, first for something negative. So you might have the karmic imprint to experience a brain tumor. I certainly hope you don't, but you might, let's say, but you might have done so much purification, right, that you end up just having some bad headaches at one point and then it's done. Whatever created that cause is over. So over time, that karma, and also positive karma, also has that ability to ripen over time, right? Unless you have immense anger and hostility and negativities that destroy some of the positives and you don't dedicate any of the merit. Those are 4 characteristics of karma that we can understand a little bit to help us, right, clean up our behavior. That's what we want to do. Try to clean up a little bit and all we can do right now is get clear on how we would like to behave from this moment forward. Okay. Which means like you don't know what you did in the past lives, maybe not. But in this life, we may have a few things that we still hold on to and go, oh, you know, I always have this thing that comes up. I mean, I've done so many negative things in this life, but one from kindergarten, can you believe? I'll never forget the girl's name, and I was really mean to her. And it's come up many times, but I really worked on that in my Vajrasattva retreat, right? But so you can purify. If you have negative things like that in your life, you can purify them right now with effective purification practice like Vajrasattva. Ultimately, if you do a Vajrasattva retreat, unbelievable, unbelievable. They say the doors to the lower realms close like that. But again, you can purify anything. It doesn't mean you're going to engage in negativity because I can purify it later. It doesn't work that way. Once you know, so we want to understand our behavior. And what we do with karma is we start getting real and we have our own little 10 Commandments guide of avoiding the 10 non-virtues and trying to practice ethical conduct. So the 10 non-virtues are divided, as many of you know, into body, speech, and mind. So I'm just going to do a little quiz because some of you know these. Little test. Okay. There's 3 of them related things you do with your body that we avoid. What do we avoid with our body? Anybody? What's number 1?
Killing.
Killing. Thank you, Patty. We avoid killing or harming others. Number 2? Anybody remember? Somebody different?
Gossiping.
Sorry? Somebody said?
Gossiping.
No, that's one of speech.
Oh,
Speech would
speech,
be
oh.
related to, so we're going to come back
Healing.
to that one. Thank you. What's number 2 that you do with your body? Sheil?
Is it sexual misconduct?
That's number 3. Thank you. That's the 3rd one you do with your body. Thank you. We avoid sexual misconduct, which is like adultery. You know, and here's a smaller scale sexual misconduct. If you know it really irritates your partner when you flirt, that's a type of sexual misconduct, by the way. And those are the little things we do. We might not think about having an affair, but we might just flirt with somebody we know it annoys them. You don't want to do that. Okay. The second one is stealing. We avoid stealing, which includes taking what isn't offered and borrowing without asking. So be careful about the little gunk, meaning like, oh, I know I'm at my friend's house. I know she'd lend me the book. She's not home right now. I'm just going to take it. You know, ask her, ask them. You know, when people come to visit me and stay with me, it's not easy right now because I'm in one little cabin, one little room. But when I was at my parents' house, I immediately, if you came, I just say, help yourself to anything in the refrigerator, anything in the cabinets, anything in the bathroom that you need, just take it. That way they're not stealing in case they decide to take a cotton ball and they didn't ask. It's a type of stealing. So I just say, whatever you need, help yourself. Open the cabinets if you need, doesn't matter. You know, that way it's all theirs. You know, just share. So we avoid killing, stealing, sexual misconduct. Here's kind of the way I'd like to behave is valuing life and trying to save life and respect life as much as I can. Right? Taking care of my belongings and the belongings of others, especially when I borrow something. And number 3 is respecting my intimate relationships and cultivating healthy, intimate relationships and respecting those of others. That. Here's the 4 related to your speech that we avoid. And they're in order of heaviness. We avoid lying. We avoid divisive speech. We avoid harsh speech. And we avoid gossip. Okay? So that was the one that was mentioned, gossiping. Gossiping is the least of the 4 with speech, but the problem with gossip, also called idle chatter, is we do it again and again and again. We're so familiar with doing it. It's not just talking about someone behind their back, it's also going on and on and on about, you know, the latest events of your sports team and nobody really cares. The movie you just saw, the kind of mundane movie you saw and you have to tell somebody every plot twist and they're really not interested. That's kind of meaningless chatter. So it doesn't mean with speech that you can only engage in conversations about Dharma, right? We have a lot of non-Dharma people in our lives, right? So you just speak skillfully. You make sure you're listening to them. And sometimes if a conversation gets really kind of in a trashy mode for me when I'm with folks, is trying to guide it back to something a little more positive maybe, or, you know, or if they're refraining in some negativity about somebody, I just don't say anything. You know, I don't need to participate in that. And so there's skillful ways you can understand how to engage. And then we've got 3 of these non-virtues that we avoid with our mind. Covetousness, which is having a greedy mind. The second one is harmful intent. And the third is holding wrong views. So I'd say with speech, let's go back to speech for a moment. What we try to cultivate is speaking honestly and speaking the truth. Number 2 would be saying things, the opposite of divisive speech, saying things that bring people together. The third, the opposite of harsh speech, would be saying genuinely saying pleasant things to people, but sincerely. And the fourth would be trying to speak meaningfully, certainly positively, things like that. And then what counteracts the three of mind would be imagine making offerings to people and rejoicing in whatever they get, right? The second would be against harmful intent is being happy with what they have and wishing them well. And the last would be cultivating right attitudes and right views, which on one level ultimately relates to the wisdom realizing emptiness, but on another level, it's about the Dharma. So there's some of you may not believe in reincarnation yet or ever. Some of you may not be sure if you really need to think about death every day, right? So holding a wrong view in relation to the Dharma would be kind of like, I think I'm going to live forever in this body. All that stuff, His Holiness talks about death and impermanence. I think that's garbage. So thoroughly dismissing some of the Dharma would be holding that wrong view like that. So those are 10 so it's kind of like now we know how to conduct ourselves. And what you want to try to do is you can write down those 10 non-virtues. I'd really love you to spend some time this week learning those 10 non-virtues so that you're really clear. And what are the ethical conducts? What are the opposites of those? It's really, really helpful to, and I'd like you to also relate with Refuge, have some contemplation on the Buddha Dharma Sangha. What's your first initial idea when you heard about Buddha? You know, what did you think about that? What do you think about it now? Is it any different now? What do you think about the ultimate levels of them? You know, the omniscient mind, teachings on emptiness, those who've had a direct perception of emptiness. Like, what about a mind that capital K knows? Wouldn't that be somebody you'd want to seek advice from because they know everything and they know all your past, present, and future karma and everybody else in all world systems simultaneously? So wouldn't they best be able to direct you to ultimate happiness? I'm just curious right now. What do you think about that? What do you think about that kind of being? Somebody you'd want to seek some support from? Or is it scary? Any thoughts?
Well, I think it's reassuring because it's not like you're depending on something that's so transient or so fickle. Like you're not depending on your neighbors or your friends, or you're not getting lost in movies or overeating or drinking. So you're finding something that is stable and reliable and concrete. It's something that's there for you to fall back on.
Yeah. What do you think about that, everybody? I mean, does it feel that way to you yet, or is it still kind of out there?
I'm kind of looking forward to it.
Looking forward to it. Great. I'm looking forward for you to look forward to it too, Jack. That sounds great. But it is initially, we kind of don't have a relationship much with the Buddha Dharma Sangha, right? So again, that's why we would study a little bit about the qualities to really understand and then do some meditation, a little bit like that. But what I want to do right now is we are going to do continue the renunciation meditation from the class. So I'd like you to just sit comfortably. Just going to do a little bit more of this meditation that I'd love you to continue this week. You can lightly close your eyes. Just take a couple of deep breaths, releasing any tension from the body and making sure your spine has a nice extension. There's a nice open flow for you to meditate from. So we were looking before in this meditation on the 6 realms of existence that I just mentioned. I just want you to explore suffering right now in general, suffering, the different ways you suffer, from the very little, very light suffering to much heavier suffering. Even the suffering that is caused because you don't have a direct perception of emptiness. How does that cause you to suffer? So I'd like you to just explore in your own daily life, your home, your relationships, your work, your community, your families, friends. I'd like you to look at the different nature of the sufferings. What are they like? Do any of them fall into certain categories, for instance? Reflect a bit around the planet and the sufferings that are going on. But really, like a laser, focus in on the suffering nature of an ordinary mind in samsara right now. This is your existence every day. And even though we have it somewhat good, ask yourself, what is it going to be like when I'm dying? If I was dying tomorrow, would there be any suffering in my mind? Because you may not have a direct perception of emptiness, does that cause you to suffer? Have you ever imputed or projected a story onto another person or onto another situation that was not accurate, that you found out later was not accurate at all? But you insisted on the story, and a whole drama erupted and a lot of suffering erupted. And what in your life are you holding as concrete, existing for all time, not changing, independently existing? Or what perhaps does the strong sense of yourself create as far as suffering in your life? Does that pose a problem at all in your life? And wouldn't it be amazing if we could rid ourselves of the suffering permanently? Can you imagine? It is possible to get out of samsara for every single one of you. To just feel conviction in your heart one day to continue the effort can bring about a permanent cessation of all your mental afflictions. But just in experiencing the different sufferings, can you drive them into your heart and really feel it's unbearable? I want out of this. I want out of this. Not in a suicidal way. I want to give up what disturbs my mind. I want to figure out, I want to concentrate. I want to make effort on that path. Try to feel that in your heart if you can, really firmly, that conviction. I want out of samsara. So slowly relax. You can slowly open your eyes. That's a continuation of the renunciation meditation that goes with this class. So I'd really recommend if you could do it, and what you want to do is if you can go in a little more deeply, pick out different ways you suffer and go in and really feel that, how disturbing it is. You know, it could be somebody talking about you at work, whether you did something or not. It could be a fight you have in your family, big fight, and how awful that is. Your kids not getting along, for instance, how painful that is for you. But really take your mind concentrated into that experience again and again. It will fade and you go back in there. You know, for me, the war in Ukraine, like anyway, it's just so criminal. These people have to die and all of their infrastructure completely destroyed again. So we have to spend money on that again when we don't have like food for the planet and healthcare and education. But no, let's just rebuild things that were already there, that were fine. And all these people dying, hiding out, living in the subway, no food, you know, running out of food and freezing cold. And it's just, you know, I'm done with it. I'm so tired of it. So you really want to get to that place that to really feel like I am going to commit myself. I want to indulge and make effort to follow a path that will get me out of that. That's real renunciation. I'm giving up whatever disturbs my mind. That's renunciation. Where I really want out of samsara. Meaning, again, this is not suicidal. This is not ending your life. This is, I need to devote myself to a path that will get me out of the suffering, become an enlightened being. Why not devote yourself to that? That path exists right now. You're a human. You got here. Every perfect thing you have right now to do that. Right? So please try to do that meditation as much as you can. So I want to talk about suffering. So, and what happens is karma and the 10 non-virtues close up the initial scope of the lower capable being of the Lam Rim. Those topics: precious human rebirth, death and impermanence, lower realms of existence, refuge, karma, like that. Make up all of those things where I'm concerned things are going to be much worse when I die. So those topics, engage in that. You do meditation on those, and slowly you start to say, okay, I'm working on my own suffering. I'm working on my own mind. That's the best I can do. I'm participating in my karma too. And see this week, how does it go with the 10 non-virtues? You know, we're all going to mess up. We always, it happens. It happens. So how's it going? So you slowly want to look at, what adjustments can I make? What realistic adjustments can I make? I was talking to somebody today who said, yeah, and then I realized I said that, to my son, I could have said it in a better way. Well, you're aware of it and you're working on it. Like, what a powerful thing to say. And I could have said that in a better way. So practice on your cushion how to say it in a better way over and over and over, so that the next time it happens, you catch yourself before the old habit jumps in. That's transformation. That's what we're doing on this path. Don't beat yourself up because the old habit was still there. The old habit's there because that's all we know. That's what we've been living. But you're working on it. It's very powerful. Okay. So that would conclude that scope. And then we go in to what's for the medium scope being of somebody who says medium motivation, medium capable being of the Lam Rim. Well, I've got a really good situation right now, but even this is full of suffering. There's so much suffering on the planet. So many things. Like right now, I'm dealing with I'm talking to a lot of people that are in their 60s and older, right? And we know what happens to people when they get in their 60s and they're older, their body starts falling apart. It's natural. It's natural. I'm sorry. I wish it wasn't like that, but that's what happens to matter. And that's life in samsara. Your body starts. And so many people I'm talking to, and some of them have really nasty things going on with their body, right? Myself included, like that. Not so bad for myself, but I'm just noticing. Yeah, aging process. It's normal. So let's look at the way we suffer, because this helps us generate renunciation. And so you might start thinking, well, I went out of this. I've got to do something about my own suffering. Okay, well, good for you. Let's do it. So we want to explore suffering, the ways we suffer. And again, what's interesting is this was the first teaching the Buddha gave. There is suffering. First noble truth, suffering exists. That's what he said. So you have to thoroughly explore your suffering. And I'm sorry, you do, if you really want to get rid of your suffering. And if you really want to have compassion for others, which is a wish that they're free of suffering, well, it's only superficial if you haven't looked at your own suffering. So we have to go through suffering to come out the other side, but we do come out the other side. So I want to look at what the cause of suffering, we mentioned before, karma and delusion. It's the cause of suffering, karma and delusion. Okay, karma we've talked about a little bit. What's delusion? Oh, here it is. This is what I'm going to talk about. Delusion is an imbalance in your mind. Delusion is an imbalance in your mind. And we're going to move into some of this also next week, is an imbalance in your mind. And I mentioned ignorance, which also could be called confusion. Well, because of fundamental primordial ignorance, okay, then what happens is it causes me to over-embellish some of the reality, over-embellish something, right? You project better qualities onto something. Well, what does that cause? That makes attachment. I've over-embellished the reality. I'm not seeing it clearly. I've over-embellished. It's a little bit like dripping icing onto your reality, and you go, oh, that looks great. Sweet and gooey and yum. I want that. Okay. So that branches out from primordial ignorance, right? And then I've got the other side is I underestimate the reality. Underestimate. I'm not seeing it clearly, and I project negative qualities onto it, and that causes me to experience anger, hatred, and aversion. Okay, and those are called the three poisons. Branching out of ignorance, okay, I then have attachment and hatred or anger. Three poisons, three poisonous states of mind. Okay, and then other delusions branch out from those. And then we have what's called the 6 root delusions. 6 root delusions. So 3 of them are the 3 poisons: ignorance, attachment or desire, anger and hatred. And then I have pride, which I think we know what pride is, a puffed up notion of yourself. And there's different kinds of pride. It's not the pride when you just say to your kid, I'm so proud of you. You did well in school. That's different. I'm talking about this puffed up arrogance, haughtiness. These are synonyms. Okay. Then I have doubt is a fifth one. Doubt, very poisonous state of mind. This is not about discernment or proper investigation, which I ask you please to do with every word that comes out of my mouth. Discernment or investigation is healthy, but doubt is where you don't check up thoroughly. You don't check up thoroughly. You know, she said something about death. I think that's garbage. I don't know. You know, and then it starts coloring everything that you touch with the Dharma like that. So you really want to thoroughly investigate, but doubt pops up. And then we've got wrong views, holding wrong views. And there's different kinds of wrong views I mentioned before. Those are the 6 root delusions, and they molt out into different combinations. So for instance, if you have, one part jealousy, one part anger, one part anger, one part ignorance, you get jealousy. Maybe you have 2 parts anger and 1 part confusion, you get belligerence. And it's interesting to read a book about mind and mental factors because it gives you all of those unwholesome mental factors. And you can kind of look at your own mind and see what you need to work on. It can be really helpful. Okay, and then I want to talk about some of the other sufferings that we go through, just in the human realm and how suffering works. I want you to have a look at these this week. Just think about the different ways you're suffering. The different ways you suffer. Buddhism likes getting into it. And I remember years ago, I was at Vajrapani. We had a center next door to us. It's still there, I think, called Heart Math. They did scientific research on the effects of love on the mind. And it was great. They were great people. I really enjoyed them. I knew the director, and somebody wrote a book and it became famous, and then they started Heart Math. And I think they're still in Boulder Creek. I'm not sure. But they were next door to us. And we noticed on the weekends in the early days, we would charge $75. Can you imagine, for a weekend, for you to come and be with us for the weekend, Friday evening dinner through Sunday lunch for a 2-day program on Dharma, right? And, the joke is a lot of Buddhist classes were about suffering and death and impermanence, but we have other classes that are about joy and bliss. But $75, you can come stay with us in a tent, bring your tent or some simple dorm in the old days. Now it's more developed. And you'd be fed, and beautiful place. You could take walks, and you'd have classes and meditation. Well, Heart Math next door had weekend programs, okay? 2 or 3 days, and $1,200 for that time, okay? And I notice on a Friday night, if I happened to head out from the center, but we had a class, or it was a weekend, we didn't have a class, but they had a class, we would, for $75, we'd get very few people would come. We were always struggling with attendance and what's going to attract people. And, they come for the big Lama, but they wouldn't come for other teachers. But Heart Math had a continual weekend stream of like 30, 40 cars coming in with Friday night. And I'd always be like, what are they doing there? And one of my friends said, well, wouldn't you rather talk about love and happiness than suffering and death? Like, doesn't it make sense? That was one of our jokes. So Buddhism really knows how to turn up the volume on suffering. However, when you can explore your suffering and transcend it and understand what dismantles the suffering, it's very, very powerful for your mind, right? And then you really start to generate serious compassion that's not superficial for yourself, for others. Let's look at some of the sufferings in general. Then I'll take some questions. We have what's called the 3, the 6, and the 8. That's how they're divided. The 3, the 6, and the 8. I want to look at the 6 sufferings of samsara in general. And a lot of these sufferings, the 3, 6, and 8, are related to each other. So we've got suffering that in samsara, nothing's certain. Nothing's certain, as you know. You set up arrangements and plans. And I know sometimes you have a vacation and you buy the air ticket and you think that's certain, but sometimes it changes, right? Beginning of the pandemic, many people had canceled tickets and couldn't go. And now we don't know. You buy a ticket, but you don't really know if things going to change. What's it going to be like? Am I going to get COVID? So we've got this uncertain nature of samsara. We know that. Number two, how about dissatisfaction, the suffering of dissatisfaction? Some people have this very badly, very badly. There was somebody I knew that every time you go out to a restaurant with them, first of all, where we're seated, they didn't like the table. Okay, we changed tables. Then they didn't like their seat where they were at the table. They had to move their seat. Then they order. Then they didn't have the thing on the menu that they wanted. Okay, but then they order. Then it comes. Then they didn't like that. There's some people really have dissatisfied mind, but samsara's nature is dissatisfaction. That's its nature. So when your car doesn't start, that's its nature. And there's uncertainty and dissatisfaction like that. So I just watch it sometimes rear its head. And then I'll go, oh yeah, oh, it's just that suffering. Well, no, I have enough. I'm pretty satisfied with what I have. Can you be satisfied with what you have? Can you be satisfied with who you are? Right? So the suffering and dissatisfaction. Okay. Then we've got two, and this is the way they literally talk about these. The suffering of leaving the body again and again, and the suffering of joining with suffering again and again. Death and birth. That's what they're talking about. Death and birth, leaving the body again and again. Now you might say, well, everybody dies, I know, but in Buddhism, because of reincarnation, and unfortunately, we don't remember our past lives or our past deaths. Sometimes I wish I could remember because it would probably invigorate my practice more, okay? But when you see people dying, many of you have been with people dying, it can be really hard. It can be a bit torturous for their minds. They can be clinging, they can be fearful, confused, like that. Do we really want to go through that again and again? So you would take each of the sufferings slowly and you'd meditate on them when you're doing more Lamra meditation. Slowly you'd meditate on those again and again to kind of go, death, I don't really want to go through that again. What about birth? So birth, on one level, it's a miracle. There's a beautiful thing because you get a new baby. Hopefully the baby's healthy, okay? But the birth process, come on, those of you that have had babies, there's a lot of suffering there. There's a lot of suffering, right? First of all, if you have a natural birth, getting that baby, I mean, it's not a big place that baby's coming out of. Baby's bigger. I mean, when I talk to my friends, like, not, and then if you have to be cut open for a cesarean section to get the baby out and the healing from that and the scar tissue and, all those different things and things that happen, so birth, do we want to go through, and what they say, the trauma for the baby coming out, there you are inside your mother, everything cold, and then you come out in this blaring room, bright lights. They say that the towel they put on them burns their skin, the skin's so sensitive. I mean, there's so many things we just don't realize. We don't remember that suffering of death and birth. Then we've got the suffering of rising and falling, right? Meaning, I remember when I would go off on these extended trips, 6 months to Asia, the first time I had a job, I saved money, the job ended, I didn't want to do this other thing. I'm taking 6 months off. Fortunately, some kind of burning light in me, I'm going to Asia. That's when I met my teacher, right? But I want to go 6 months. I'm just going to explore. I wasn't into the Dharma at first. I'm just going to go. And when you're leaving and you're packed up and I've let go and everything started, got all my money, I've got all my stuff, I'm taking my backpack, everything's great. And everybody envious. Everybody like, wow, she's going, how did you set that? That's great. Everything was great. I'm on top of the world. But when I come back, broke, right? Looking for a job, but I've had a 6-month break in my resume. Who's going to hire me? Where am I going to live? Sleeping on somebody's couch. You're there at the bottom, back at it again. Many things we have rise and fall. You got a new job. It's great. Then you hate your boss. Then this happened. Then you're having financial problems. Over and over it happens. Aren't you tired of that? Right? And here's the sixth, the suffering of loneliness. Well, I think we all know what that's about. And we know many lonely people as well. How difficult like that. Okay. So something to contemplate. Spend some time thinking about these different sufferings. How do you experience it in your life? And really use it to generate this renunciation. I want out. I don't want to do this anymore. I don't want to do this anymore. Like that. I remember getting ordained because I thought about it for a while. I was around the Dharma about 13 years. I had thought about it, and I kind of spend, I was in Asia once a year, kind of living with communities of nuns and female practitioners just to see. And I felt very peaceful and I liked that and stuff. But then I go back and then I have a relationship. Okay. And then I'd be kind of far away. And then I think again, in between relationships, could I do this? And over and over. And then when it happened, I was with a boyfriend at the time who was a little bit ahead of me getting ordained. He was attending Lama Zopa Rinpoche. So he was really like, oh, I really want to do this. And the Lama's here and we want to, and I just wasn't ready. I just didn't, I was like, I needed to think about it a little bit more. But just due to this retreat and what was happening, I had to teach a class in town. I was living in Vajrapani. He had his robes. They were going to ask about this ordination. And I left and there was going to be this ordination. And I thought he was going to get ordained in that ceremony. And I wasn't going to be there. I had to teach. I come back, no boyfriend, relationship over. That's, and so it's a 20-minute drive from Vajrapani to get to the main road. It's a 20-minute mountain, little narrow lane drive. And I had this conversation with him and I said, if you really want to do this, you have all my support. I totally, absolutely, it'll be hard for me at first. But if you really want to do this, I'm totally behind you. We had the discussion. I thought, that's it. I get in the car. And as I'm driving out the 20 minutes, I'm thinking in my mind, quite dramatically, what am I going to do? Am I going to start over with someone else? New relationship with someone else? And this, and all those thoughts, really intense thoughts bubbling up. I'm kind of crying a little bit of my boyfriend, the end of my relationship. And I really liked him. And, I finally found a boyfriend with the same teacher and the Dharma and all these things were bubbling up. And then then I started thinking, I'm kind of tired of this. Another relationship. How much time do you spend in a new relationship? You get to know each other and catch up on all the stories and all those. It was so time consuming. And somehow by the end of the 20 minutes getting the main road, I was kind of like, I think I'm done with that. I'm tired. Renunciation. Some renunciation coming up. Letting go, intimate relationship is the way I could see it. It was kind of like, I don't really know if I have the energy to do that again. So renunciation. So see how that goes for you this week. Please, any questions before we finish? Wait, Sheil had something. Can someone tell me when this even is? I don't know what you mean.
It's okay. Yeah, I got it. It was for Lama Zopa Rinpoche's retreat that potentially could be coming. I just wasn't sure how I get informed about it. Thank you very much.
Right, sure. Any other questions, please? Let me just put the gallery on. There we are. If anything I mentioned tonight, so we've gone through refuge and karma, suffering, because there's a lot of material in this class, and we're going to be heading into bodhicitta and emptiness. So again, homework, please explore the 10 non-virtues. How do they work in your life? What about the virtues, the ethical conduct? Can you turn the volume up a little bit on those? See how that works. Think about refuge. What do you take refuge in now? What are your coping mechanisms? Are they working for you to really protect your mind from future suffering? And if you can do the renunciation meditation and just explore the different ways you suffer. Think about the 6 root delusions: ignorance, anger, desire, pride, doubt, wrong views. Think about generating, wanting to give those up, slowly working on those. Okay, thank you very much. I'm going to stop there. I'm going
Amy, can I just ask you one question? When you do for purification, how do you know whether or not you've purified the negative karma?
Well, you don't know. You
Oh.
don't know, but you just continue to do. But sometimes, especially on a longer retreat, and even in daily recitation of Vajrasattva, for instance, or doing prostrations every day, you might get some signs. You might have a dream you're drinking milk, a dream you're skiing down pristine slopes, you're in a shower, having a beautiful shower in a beautiful bathhouse. Those are signs of purification. Yeah. And slowly, as we build faith in the Dharma and our Dharma practice, you start realizing, yeah, this feels good. I want to keep doing this and that. So we're going to do some basic dedication prayers to dedicate whatever positive energy we've created from this evening together. Thank you so much. Can we roll that into our practices to really help us have proper renunciation of suffering and really identify how we suffer, let it go, to really grow a stronger mind that wants to let go of the disturbances in it, which is going to help you commit more to an actual practice, but a realistic, consistent practice. It's going to help you fully wake up so you can be of the most benefit to all living beings. I'd especially like to dedicate to all the beings in Ukraine, and for Putin's mind to turn away to stop this war immediately, and all the Russian soldiers, and for all the beings who need additional healing, can they receive it completely right now? I will share my screen and you can join me in some of these prayers. So let me know if you can't see them for some reason. O Janju Senjo Rinpoche, Ma Ke Panam Ge Gyurchi, Ke Panyamba Me Pa Yi, Gone Gondu Belwarsho. However many sick sentient beings there are, may they quickly be freed from all sicknesses. May all the sicknesses, without exception of transmigratory beings, never occur again. I fully dedicate all these virtues to be able to train just like the hero Manjushri, who knows reality, and just like Samantabhadra as well. And I'd like to dedicate for the long lives of His Holiness the Dalai Lama, the wish-granting, wish-fulfilling jewel, source of every single benefit and happiness in this world, to the incomparably kind Tenzin Gyatso, I beseech, may all your holy wishes be spontaneously fulfilled. For Lama Zopa Rinpoche's long life, you who uphold the subduer's moral way, who serve as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Manjunath's victorious doctrine, who masterfully accomplish magnificent prayers honoring the three sublime ones, Savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. So we're looking for a spiritual program coordinator for Land of Medicine Buddha. If that's something you're interested in, or if you know anybody, you'd be planning the programs here and hosting those, please let me know. You can contact me at, I'll put in the chat. And we can also use some help remotely with tech things and all kinds of things like that. So if you're savvy in that way, please let me know. Greatly appreciate your help. Thank you so much for joining. And thank you to Thupten Kunga Center and Patty and Cecilia.
Thank you, Venerable Amy, so much. Everyone feel free to unmute and say goodbye or whatever.
And please be well, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And if you'd like, there are these agencies that are being posted in the news to give money to Ukraine to help all the different efforts. So if that's something you're inclined to do, this is a great time of the year, these 2 weeks, to do that. Land of Medicine Buddha is urgently needing funds as well. So if you go to our website, there's a donate button as well. We really appreciate it. And it culminates on March 18th, the Day of Miracles. So it's a great time to practice generosity. Thank you so much. Please be well.
Namaste.